Welcome to Human Athlete, and we've got a special episode today, a part two with Daniel Edozie. And the reason we decided to do this was obviously the last one was very long and stuff like that, and we still felt there was more there, because this podcast is about not only like telling the stories of like where people have come from and what they've gone through and who they've now become, but it's like looking at like the snapshots along the way. Why did that then make you into who you are? How did you feel in that moment? How did you break that down to really relate to and understand that journey? And I felt like there was so much more in there to go into, and to really like the big focus obviously of the last one was understanding, like literally hearing it, witnessing like the stuff you were going through. But I feel like there was so much more that we were starting to touch as it went on into the internal side, the healing journey, what you've gone through to understand and to face and to like, live your life in a way that, accepts and understands what you've been through. And that's why we're here. Thanks again. Honestly, I appreciate you so much for coming back on. I can't wait to continue this conversation.
No worries, Elliot. And yeah, like you mentioned earlier, you were saying how, we ended the way that we did, but it was like, yeah, we got to keep on doing a little bit more, dive a little bit more deeper. And that's one of the things I wanted to touch on was a little bit of the self-love journey and
Mm-hmm.
recovering and yeah, literally letting go of the weight that or the burden that you have been carrying over some time so that way you can heal and begin to feel better and yeah,
Mm-hmm.
move forward and propel up. That's the way that we can look at it. But yeah, no, thank you for having me on the show again, and yeah, looking forward to getting this part two in.
Sweet, man. Let's as always jump right in. And I think for me now let's go back to the starting point, not at the beginning of the journey, but when you started realizing and having the awareness to go, oh, like I've survived this, but it's still lingering. Like there's still that burden, like you just said.
Yeah. Okay. So it's funny because it actually started this past, I guess this past season. Like
Mm-hmm.
I was always aware of like you know the situation, the journey, and everything that I had experienced growing up and going through those tough times. But it wasn't until this year that I slowly started to understand how, yeah, traumatic sort of adverse childhood experiences can actually affect you as an adult. So one of the things that I've been battling with this past year was a bit of self doubt and
Mm-hmm.
confidence as well, and it was one of those things that, well, in order to really understand your confidence, you also have to understand what self doubt is and where does it come from. And I've been talking to a couple of people, like my former instructor, psychology instructor, um, and was also reading a few books here and there and just really thinking about it. But it wasn't until I started listening to Clubhouse and start listening to certain rooms on Clubhouse, and it really started to make you think about how do you really heal? How do you really let go of burdens that you have been carrying without you even knowing that you have been carrying, and how do you get rid of them? And so, okay, I was in a space this past year where, okay, I've been battling with self-doubt, and the thing was, in order when I'm thinking about like my performance, I play better when I'm like upset or I'm pissed off or I'm
Mm-hmm.
angry or I'm frustrated, whatever. And I had been taking my self-doubt, and this is what my psychology instructor had said. She said you need to arouse yourself differently, so that way you can yeah, you can play better. Because this is what I'm telling you is what I told her. Like, I feel I play better when I'm upset, I'm pissed off, I'm angry. And she was saying that, okay, you need to arouse yourself because my routine, or what's the word, my pregame,
Mm-hmm.
is meditation before games. And usually I'm much more in a calm, relaxed state. Sometimes I might just put myself in that zone or in that mood or whatever, where it's game time. Let's go. Boom.
Mm-hmm.
Let's
Mm-hmm.
dominate. But what I did, okay, was thinking about, okay, how can I get pissed off? How can I get upset? How can I get angry or whatever? And um, I always what I end up finding myself doing was I used to take the frustration that I felt of being self-doubt or being doubtful, and that kind of like battle, that internal battle, and I used to use it in a space. I used to use it in a way where I would find a way to get myself upset about it, and then use that frustration to try and compete. But now here's what I learned, and as time went on, as I really slowly started to become much more vulnerable, I started to look at self doubt from the location in which it came from,
Mm-hmm.
and the location of it came from when my mom, or I was abandoned in Skid Row by my own mother, and in that moment, there's the sense of neglect, rejection. There's
Mm-hmm.
that sense of not feeling good enough. There's that sense of, yeah, you're not worthy enough, you're not important enough. There's those things, like, it's that thing where you're like, dang, my mom left me. Like, she thought I wasn't good enough to get off the bus and come and pick me up. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, or I wasn't important enough. And
Mm-hmm.
still to this day, it's like, it's something that you just gotta live with for the rest of your life. But
Mm-hmm.
again,
And I can just interrupt as well. That fear of abandonment is probably one of the biggest fear I'd say that lives in most people, that they live their lives through. I
mm,
can relate to that in myself, not through experience, but through having that fear. And what is crazy to me about your story is you literally went through that.
mm, mm.
That's what is like the reality of that. Is most people it's a fear, yours was a reality.
And the thing is, it's like you didn't even ask for it, didn't even see it coming, was not expecting it. And and like you say, some people live through this but haven't experienced it, whereas people who have experienced it have lived through it, but they have a sense of, yeah, there's something much more genuinely intrinsically deep or sensitive. There's a bit of sensitivity behind it. So yeah, man, and just thinking about it, like, yeah, like we talked about in the first podcast. My mom abandoned me in that moment. It was like it was a choice between either sleeping on the streets or it was going and finding somewhere to sleep. And I chose the latter. But yeah, just as a kid, like that's a scar, and still now to this day. I don't think my mom realizes what she did, and I'm not going to be upset. I'm not going to be angry. I think that's one thing in which that's probably going to come up eventually is forgiveness, which we'll talk about it eventually. But yeah, just those emotions in that moment, um, and how that experience can really latch onto your subconscious mind, and you begin to actually, you know,
Mhm.
generate or carry these thoughts of low self-esteem and stuff like that. So that's one thing that I realized over um the this past season, and not feeling good enough or feeling like no one like really believes in me. Like my mom didn't really believe in me. Like that's crazy. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm. Mhm.
So then so yeah, I had to live through that. And then once I kind of slowly realized this, I realized how much like pain and upset was there. And even though that it was an unfortunate experience and an unfortunate moment, there's also the other side that you can realize that you've overcame that and look at where you are today, sort of thing.
Mhm.
So, but it was also too, like, going back into the experience and redefining, reattaching the meaning.
Mhm.
In that moment, it's like, what do you see yourself like? If you was your older self now or your adult, what would you tell your inner child at that time?
Mhm.
And your inner child needs to hear the words like, "You are good enough. You are worthy." And you are an amazing individual. This is unfortunate it's happened, but you are, yeah, you deserve whatever it is that you deserve in a good way. So yeah, but once you kind of like put in a new meaning behind it, and you can slowly start to unwind and kind of like strip away the layers to get to whatever it is that you need to get to, then yeah, it was like understanding where the self-doubt comes from, and then putting a new meaning behind the experience, and then allowing this new seed to be planted to allow it to grow. And then that way you can really slowly start to believe in yourself and become much more confident. And the crazy thing is, the crazy thing is confidence. In fact, I was listening to Mel Robbins, and she said confidence is a skill, right? It's a confidence skill, or the willingness to try. Now, I partly agree with it. But then there's a part of me that also that is also interrelated with courage. You know, like there's confidence, but there's also courage. You know, if confidence is the skill, then courage has to be like the emotion behind wanting to take action. So yeah, and I thought about that, and it was like, you know what? I am a confident person. I do take action relentlessly without even thinking about it. Like there's not one thing that that I'm afraid of when it comes to taking action. Like I'm listen, if we're doing this, all right, cool, let's do it. Like what do we got to do? Where do we start? Sort of thing. Never in a state of fear in terms of what could possibly happen with taking on something new. So then once I slowly started to realize this, I'm like, you know what? Like for example, like I was always battling self-doubt when I was shooting the ball. You know, I didn't know whether this is the right shot. Should I shoot the ball? Oh, you know, should I pass it? But then after a while, I'm like, you know what? Just shoot the ball. Like, what's the worst that could happen? You miss a shot? Okay, next shot. You know what I mean? Like that's that. But and then once I kind of realized that, and I really start to put my like mind around it, or wrap my mind around it, I was like, yeah, you know. Then now self-doubt doesn't have any that doesn't have anything on my confidence now. So yeah, that's that, and that's the thing with like confidence and self-doubt, and yeah, just really growing from that.
I think you explained it brilliantly, because for me, I look at confidence, I look at braveness, or courage or whatnot, and I think the only thing limiting those those skills or those emotion actions or whatnot is that fear. And it always brings me back to the how scared we are of that fear, and even sitting with it and knowing it. And I'll always say, sit with that fear. Like, and I think there's a quote that says, fear is a friend of exceptional people. And that hits me, because it's like the curiosity around this fear, this self-doubt. Why is that there? Okay, where does that come from? Okay, I've sat with this emotion now for 5-10 minutes, whatever it may be. Oh, this isn't that powerful. This ain't that bad. Like, I understand this. Not necessarily, you don't even need to understand the depths of which you're understanding the origin and where it's come from. So even just sitting with it and facing it head on, and like dealing with the resistance that it's bringing, and the everything that comes with it, then you kind of realize that ain't you. Like that isn't, there is like that space between the fear, the thoughts, the emotions of fear, the whatever it may be, and the calmness and the strength within yourself. You're in it, like the true self, whatever you want to call it. And there is a space between those, and in that you can then see upon this fear and go, cool, like let's bring it. Then you get to that perspective where you're saying, what's the worst that can happen? What is it? And I want to throw it back quickly to when you said about peeling back those layers to plant that seed, and kind of asked, how did you kind of knock down and face, or at least keep going and want to keep going through all those like resistances and those walls of resistance in that healing journey?
How you said, how did I
like
take
how
it?
did you keep going through that? Because there's that that resistance, and it to sit with it, to how did you go on that, like begin that, keep going?
Man, I started, like I said, I started listening to just different individuals on Clubhouse, and I really started to think for myself. I'm like, vulnerability, what is that? And what does it take to get to that? And yeah, once you really once I started to slowly understand that to get to vulnerability, you have to learn how to deal and face particular emotions, in which what you're talking about here. then it was like, wow, you realize you have a lot of healing to do. There's so much healing to do. And obviously, if you want to become better and you want to grow, like, you have to take the time out to do this. A lot of people go through life in this sort of, I don't know, they go through life on autopilot,
Mm-hmm.
and don't even know that some certain behaviors come from certain experiences of which we used to experience. So we've been programmed from our younger sort of, toddler to, child to teenage years and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, once you really slowly start to understand that, wait, my behaviors or my thoughts and my emotions all contribute to the situation. And they could either contribute to the situation in a positive way, they could contribute to the situation in a subconscious way. And sometimes it's also too, like, knowing, like, you're in the space around people and you feel like there's something about you that makes you feel like you're not clicking, or you're not in, or maybe you're overthinking something, but you don't know why you're overthinking something. Like, for example, people who may find themselves in a particular social environment. They might find themselves overthinking whether they fit in because potentially throughout their childhood, they either have struggled to make friends, or they have always been made to feel fun of being around. So anytime they're in a social environment, they're constantly self-conscious about their presence and how they look or how they feel, or stuff like that. Even in relationships, even in job careers, like, for example, like, and come to think about it, the reason why I started my business or whatever, yeah, of course you want to make money and stuff, but because you've understood that from your personal background, you and your mom, or me and my mom and I, and there's been no sort of like role models around. Like, we've always constantly struggled. You know what I mean? And so there's that motivation where build something for you that gives you access to money. So when you do start a family and stuff, then that you wouldn't have to. Now, I'm not saying I'm going to be that guy that's going to give my kids and shower them with everything, but at least, like, if they want to do something, then they won't have to worry about money. Like, just go
Mm-hmm.
do your thing. Like,
Mm-hmm.
whatever you want to do, go do it. I got your back. That kind of support. Whereas, like, on the opposite end, for me, like, I come from that situation where even when I was in foster care, but I came from that situation where I couldn't go do what I wanted to go do. If I wanted to go play basketball, I had to go panhandle in the streets to go ask for some money to go get a ball from the shop or something like that, and whatnot. And even in foster care, yeah, like, I was playing AU and stuff, but most times that was free because my foster parent couldn't afford it and couldn't get any
Mm-hmm.
funding for it or something like that. Or, I only had, like, the only pair of basketball shoes that I had was the shoes that I got from the club that I was playing for. And that was, yeah, not my foster parent could afford me a pair of basketball shoes and stuff. So I literally played with these one pair of shoes throughout the whole entire season.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's that kind of like motivation. Like, you understand that that's motivation. It's like, okay, there's a motivation behind that. So that's a good thing. But yeah, you just you see the ugly, but you see the good, you see the bad, well, the bad, the ugly, the good, and the great. Like,
Mm-hmm.
let's put it like that. And yeah, once you really start to dive into why you do certain things, then it makes it so much more clearer to understanding who it is that you are as a person and
Mm-hmm.
why you do what you do. And so once I kind of like grasped this, I was like, aha, okay. So it wasn't just like healing from like the tragic moment of when my mother had abandoned me in Skid Row, but it was also like, well, okay, there's that, but then there's this. I do this, I do this, I do that, I do that, because there's certain things that I do based on certain experiences that I've had. And again, life sometimes teaches you lessons that you don't learn in school. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I say, you graduating from the university of life. Hey, at least I got a degree in that department. You know what I mean? So yeah, man. But yeah, it's just really exploring like your behaviors and like your certain behaviors, and really just going head on with it with courage. Don't be afraid to become vulnerable and then understand why you do some of the things that you do. If anything, there's power in that. There's a
Mm-hmm.
beauty in that. There's a sense of control within that. When you become vulnerable and you really understand like why you are the way you are who you are, then nobody can really tell you nothing, because
Mm-hmm.
they have to respect the fact that you're being this open and you're being like this honest. So
Mm-hmm.
being this honest, not dishonest. So yeah. So yeah, that's it. Like literally, like you
I've
say,
never heard a bigger epitome of the phrase, I am not what has happened to me, I am what I choose to become.
that's so true though.
And the perspective you're taking on that is like the root core of that quote and that say. Because it's like, okay, life's given me all this, suffering, all these different things. But not only is it giving me stuff I got to heal from, but it's given me things like you said, perspective, lessons, and traits and habits and whatnot. Like, I can call out straight away your humility and like
Mm,
the joy, like that's coming from being able to find that from nothing in a way, right? Like
mm,
to be able to have that now, because like, and to not to be able to find that, even that's incredible. And like for me, to be able to have that perspective where you're zooming out and you're going, whoa, there's a lot to this, good and bad.
mm,
Like that's incredible, because there's so much in that. And so, okay, cool, I've been dealt with these cards, whatever, this is my hand. But like, what am I going to do with this? I've got some good cards here, I've got some like difficult ones, but like that strength and that courage to be like that in the first place, that's incredible. And
mm.
that perspective, and I said that in the last episode, the perspective which you've adopted this whole time, it's just fascinating. It really is.
Appreciate that, Elliot. Appreciate that. But then, this isn't wisdom for me to keep. This is wisdom to share. This
Mm-hmm.
is this is stuff that could help potentially make an impact in someone's life, a positive
Mm-hmm.
impact. And yeah, it's literally like you say, being humbled. And this is one thing. Being humbled. When we learn how to humble ourselves, we learn how to see everything from a completely different point of view. If we're not humbled and we're beating on our chest all the time, we miss the key lessons that help us to understand life from another completely different point of view. So that's one thing I say, is that it's always best to be humbled, because therefore you can listen. So yeah, and that's
And
and that's good.
well, that humility, that being humbled, takes the self-importance away.
Mm,
That takes the focus off yourself. Do I look good? Do I fit in? Do I blah blah blah, whatever that may be? It takes the I, the me, the my away,
mm,
and it gives the space and the opportunity to be present,
mm,
to see what is being given to you, or like, and understand that process of that present moment. And that's incredible, because that then means that you're taking so much suffering away from yourself. Why has this happened to me? Oh, why have they taken this from me? Why have I been given this? But instead it's that, okay, cool, this isn't necessarily all about me. Like, there is so much here in this moment about other people, about other things, about the opportunity to give. Like, that humility is taking that self-importance, that ego away completely,
mm,
stripping you of that.
mm. And you said one of the most important things, being present.
Mm-hmm.
When you're present, like there's a space of gratitude that you just have for breathing. And
Mm-hmm.
and when you have that kind of space of gratitude, then you appreciate things so much more, regardless whether they're big, small, even medium size or whatever. And yeah, you just have much more appreciation for life in general. And
Mm-hmm.
with that being said, it's that thing where, like you say, you coming from nothing. When you come from nothing, you know, there's these kind of like pictures and these labels. You can't don't ever forget where you came from.
Mm-hmm.
And when you come from nothing and you struggle, or you've learned to struggle, or you have struggled, but you've learned how to deal with those struggles, you learn how to become a master of those experiences. Therefore, you gain so much more wisdom, and you
Mm-hmm.
have much more wisdom that yeah, having everything cannot teach you. So And that's like, again, another sort of like, I wouldn't say philosophical, but sort of like a mindset thing, um, that you slowly allow to become a part of your journey moving forward and stuff. So you just see like, young people, or even some certain adults who have everything but complaining about the smallest thing. Oh my god, I don't know, I got a scuff mark on my 700-pound shoes or something, and it's just like, is it that serious? You know what you can do with that 700 pounds? You can feed a village of people. You know what I mean? People, or you could help kids overcome some starvation over the next couple of weeks or months or whatever. So stuff. When you're humbled, and yeah, you appreciate the materialism, but at the same time, yeah, being humbled and being in the space of the present moment, you understand that this isn't much of a big deal. This means absolutely nothing.
100%. I think I always say about the material thing is if we live in a material world, then how can we value love, friends, and family? And that's
Mm.
anyone who's material as it gets understands those three things to some extent. And that is always the thing for me. And so bringing on to that awareness and being present, how has your like awareness evolved? Like I also, you said you meditate pre-game, stuff like that. How has that evolved for you? In how do you start meditating? Where'd that come about? How has your awareness grown?
So, and it's quite interesting you've asked me this, because it's like, when you, like I said, when you become humble, like you're able to like listen. And I've always tried to be as humble as I can. Not always been perfect. No, please don't think I've been humble for the last 25 years. 20, in fact, let's make it 20 years. But when you become humbled by experiences, and like, I'm not sure if we talked about it in the first podcast, but my humbleness came when we entered the first day in a shelter in
Mm-hmm.
Las Vegas at the age of 11.
Mm-hmm.
Completely different, mind blowing. Um, walked into the shelter and saw that there were just as many people in there. I can't even tell you how many people was in there, but there's a lot of people that looked like they were just struggling. Like, they had no hope. They didn't have any courage. They didn't have any motivation. They didn't believe life was going to turn out better. Or maybe they had just hit block. They just might have hit a brick wall and never found a way to overcome it, or even obstacles or hurdles and stuff. And so, looking at that, it really was like, wow, like, I didn't know any of these people, didn't know what on earth had happened. But surprisingly or not, at the age of 11, I started talking to some of these people,
Mm-hmm.
and just like, it was all, well, it was a it was a female and family shelter, so there was only housing women,
Mm-hmm.
single parent women with children, and started talking to some of them. And yeah, so some stories I was just completely mind blown by, and I was like, wow, like, I can't remember all the conversations that I had. I'm not even gonna lie to you, but just know that listening to their stories and listening to where they were in life, it was like, wow, like,
Mm-hmm.
this is mad. So, um, but yeah, so ever since that day, it's always just been humbled, and even in school and stuff, and then growing up through my, like, going into foster care. Now, here's where it gets interesting, because I was always aware of something, and I think, and well, in fact, there's something else here I kind of missed out before I go into foster care. But when I was in Skid Row, and I was in this environment constantly. Sometimes I was always looking over my shoulder,
Mm-hmm.
looking for if there's any threats, if there's anybody that might be behind me, or is watching what's in front of me. So I had to stay in this level of awareness.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and most of the times I was always by myself, always alone, and going on ventures, or going to different places and stuff. And so I knew, like, the only person that I could depend on was me, and It was up to me to go find something to eat. It was up to me to figure out where I'm going to stay at tonight. It was up to me to try and figure out if, if I needed new clothes or whatever, or change my clothes, whatever. And so I was always constantly in the space of like having to like just look, just look, watch out, read, be humbled and stuff. And yeah, and then after a while, like taking that sort of experience into foster care, and I didn't do it intentionally, but those experiences kind of giving off something in a positive way, it helped me to see situations completely differently at the age of 12, 12, 13, 14. My life as being a foster kid was good, with like having a roof over my head, having a bed to sleep on, and having food to eat and stuff. But then when it came to like understanding the dynamics of family and how they work and who's who does what, the drama, the beef, yada yada yada, it's like, wow, okay, like he just, yeah, there's something a bit more deeper and darker going on here. So yeah, I just kind of like picked up on intuitive vibes and understanding that certain people can have an impact on you. And yeah, once you slowly start to understand how certain people have an impact on you, then you know whether or not to keep this person in your life or not. So and yeah, but it wasn't till recently, so that was all the way up to 23, 24, maybe 25ish or so. But then I started reading The Power of Now. And sure you've seen this book.
Mr. Eckhart Tolle, what a guy.
Oh, it was, how you say his name?
Eckhart Tolle.
Eckhart Tolle. Wow,
Yeah.
I thought it was Eckhart Tolle. Oh, okay. Wow, I didn't even know that, but I learned something new. Learned something new. But yeah, once I started reading this book, the books just started opening your mind up to all sorts of stuff. Really, really take you on that spiritual journey. And once you understood it, you're like, wow. Wow. Like, and then you start reading much more in detail about some of the topics he's talking about and what he goes into. And it's just like, it all makes sense. Aha.
Yeah.
So yeah, and ever since then, it's just been like, yeah, just and then plus too, like certain experiences, like again, what I said earlier, that certain experiences can potentially have an impact on you, especially like dealing with people. Like who you want to be around, who you don't want to be around. You know what kind of vibes you want to feel. You know what kind of vibes you don't want to feel, and yeah, you know what kind of team you want to play for. You know what kind of team you don't want to play for. So and yeah, you just slowly start to pick up on things, and you begin to learn what attracts you, and you begin to learn what is it that you're attracted to. So yeah, and that's what the self-awareness journey has been like. It's just been very finely much very yeah very it's been very like intuitive, but also like open, but also knowing how to quickly detach yourself from something that you don't need to be attached to. So like yeah. So
I think I get a real sense that you've always, since that day that you mentioned, had a real deep understanding and awareness around the external reality. Okay, I'm here. And like you said, you stripped your ego very quickly at that point and was kind of like, okay, cool. This is it. Like, you didn't avoid that. You didn't distract from it. You had to face it. And like you said, that alertness around Skid Row and all these different things meant you had to. It's survival mode. And then as this self-awareness grows, and like you said, in the last year, when you read The Power of Now, you realize there's an internal reality, there's an internal dialogue, an internal world that also must be understood. The healing, you know, the understanding where things come from, all these different, thoughts and stories that you tell yourself. And then obviously The Power of Now is basically just detaching you from all of those. And I think it's crazy how that awareness seems to be matching up within you now. And I can really kind of see that in those recent times, like that awareness is kind of like bringing together the external, the internal. and that's how you're healing. And that's a pretty powerful process.
That is, you know, and when you realize that when you realize that there's also growth that is taking place
in itself.
And it's like, boom, it's like, wow. That's all. It just takes you to a whole nother level, you know? And again, it's just, self-awareness. A lot of people start the self-awareness journey kind of late, you know. I wouldn't say late intentionally, but like they don't start becoming self-aware until maybe they're found in a certain situation, and it's like, oh, I really need to think. Oh, you're hit by something. You know what I mean? You're hit by something that's made you have to think completely differently now, and you're trying to navigate through this thought process, and you're trying to figure out, what is it that I'm thinking, you know? And once you start asking certain questions, then your curiosity begins to grow. It begins to really start to think about, well, wait a minute, I'm here, but do I really want to be here? Or I'm in this situation. Is this situation really helping me? You know, you start to just want to explore. And at that moment is where you realize you know absolutely nothing. You know? So now it's up to you to start figuring stuff out, you know? So, but yeah, it's like, going on that kind of self-awareness journey, it's just, you just got to become open-minded. But then there's a thing where, I'm not sure, you might have heard about it. It's the trans-theoretical model.
No.
So it's basically, just think of a scale, okay, or a line. And so you have, I'm just going to put it in numbers because I don't know the exact names for it. But you have the far end, okay, which let's say that's -2, -2. And then you have right to the right of that is -1. You have 0, and you have 1 and 2. Okay, so if you're on the far end of the left, -2, that means you have absolutely no clue. You don't know what's going on. You haven't even thought about it. It doesn't even appeal to you. You know what I mean? But as you slowly move forward from -2 to -1, I probably should actually find these. Give me 1 second. I feel like I need to find these terms. That way, that way it kind of makes it. It kind of gives it a bit more of a clearer understanding. TTM model. Okay, let's see. So there you go. Okay, so you have all the way to the left, pre-contemplation. Okay. In the middle, as so on the right of that is then contemplation. Then in the center of that, it is preparation. And then on the right of preparation is action. And on the right of action is maintenance. So basically, what I'm trying to say is that depending on where you are within that scale determines where you potentially could go or where you may go. So basically, if I'm saying that if you haven't given a lot of things a thought, you stay in that pre-contemplation zone, which is not knowing. But as certain situations in life happen or whatever, you begin to enter like the contemplation zone, which means that you now are starting to go on this kind of like journey to becoming open-minded and becoming much more like self-conscious, at least. And then what I say though is preparation. You know, preparation would be like, okay, I'm on the self-conscious journey or self-awareness journey, and I'm preparing to begin to explore, you know, other avenues within my personal life and what brings about the most happiness, the most joy, you know, those feel good emotions and positive outcomes and stuff. And then, like I said, to the right of that is the action. You know, you're willing to take action. You're willing to do whatever is necessary for you to get there to those happy sort of emotions and positive outcomes, et cetera, et cetera. And then and then after that, it's just all about maintenance. And what that simply means is that you stay on this level of self-awareness, then now you can always read the situations, or you can understand how certain things can potentially have an impact on you, you know, or how this may make you feel, or how that might affect you or impact you or whatever the case is. So yeah, but then again, it's dependent on where you are in that like journey determines where you're gonna go next. So yeah, hope that makes sense.
No, it does. It's very interesting. I think going back to that like where you get there, let's say in that kind of pre-contemplation to contemplation kind of jump, and you said about how, like, you know, when people are put in situations where they have to deal with it, I've always found it very, very interesting, because, you know, where does awareness come from? Where does the mirror come up and make you go, oh, I got to look at myself here? Where, like, and I think for a lot of people, like you said, in like when you described it as late, it's like you'd say the average amount of people either never get to contemplation in terms of awareness, or it's kind of like a midlife crisis, which is like the generic term. Like, and I think that's like become so standard that people forget that it is actually kind of like an awareness going, hold on, what do I want here? Like that is that midlife crisis is actually that. But what I always kind of think is like, for me myself, it's come about in the last 2 or 3 years, and I've been like, okay, what, like, where's this come from? What is, like, it's kind of become like a sensitivity to life, like a sensitivity to what's going around me, sensitivity to my thoughts. Why am I thinking this? What is this coming? And all these questions, and, you know, overthinking, sensitivity, awareness, whatever you want to call it. And it really kind of, I think for the most part, it comes about from, you know, trauma, from crises and trauma and situations where one can't process it in a logical way externally, and so they can't find a way to avoid it or to distract from it or to change it in a dreamlike way and make it even more of an illusion. And what is incredible about trauma and the things, and I hate playing down any trauma or any crisis or anything, but there is that opportunity to grow in terms of having more awareness and sensitivity and realizing there is an internal world here that deserves some attention. And that's when I throw out the phrase to you, and the question, not the phrase, is sensitivity, or I'd phrase it like that, is probably the best way. Is sensitivity a curse or a blessing? To life, to thoughts, to whatever it may be.
Sensitivity, that's a great question. Is it a curse or is it a blessing? It's probably dependent on how you use it. So it could either be a curse or it could either be a blessing. And we know, well, as we know, with mental health and everything, you know, it's big. It is big because, you know, you have overwhelming sensations of anxiety and stress and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, it could be a curse if you feel like you're not in control of it. You know, but if you're in control of it, then you understand how sensitivity can help you find some awareness in a certain situation, which therefore becomes a blessing, if that makes sense. But yeah, it's knowing how sensitivity works. And sometimes sensitivity, in order for you to align with it, you have to be able to align with what is important to you, what matters to you, what are your values, you know, what do you allow, what do you not allow, where is crossing the line, what is some things that you tolerate, what some things you don't tolerate, you don't like, or you do like, whatever. And understanding that when somebody, let's say for example, if somebody is being done wrong by, you know, or someone is being made to feel like crap intentionally, and your sensitivity picks up on how this person on the receiving end is feeling it, then obviously that is a means for you to step up and defend the well-being of someone else, if that makes sense, you know, sort of thing. But yeah, it's dependent on how it's used and how it might impact the situation.
So I'm going to counter you on that. And for me, the sensitivity in a personal experience level, unless, and this is, like you said, in the mental health, this is the most awful thing, unless you give up and people obviously take their own lives because of these things, which is obviously where it's worse than a curse. It's, it's a nightmare, and that's obviously the most awful situation. But unless sensitivity doesn't cause giving up, and it doesn't leave you in that situation, I think that it can only allow you to keep making little steps, whether they are the smallest steps in the world, or that you're going in great positivity and growth and making giant leaps forward. But like you said, in terms of feeling in others, once you know the darkness within yourself, you can begin to be present with the darkness of others. And that awareness as well, like if you're going back and you feeling guilty, or you're feeling angry at yourself, and you're sensitive and aware of that, and then you're going, oh, I've gone back to my past habits here, I've gone back to feeling anxious, I've gone back to feeling depressed, whatever it may be, is what you realize is, by having the awareness that I've gone back to these habits, or I'm feeling this way again, or even being aware of the guilt that I'm feeling because of this, you're growing in itself. That awareness is natural progression from where it was.
But do you call that, and how does that relate to sensitivity?
Because sensitivity is seeing life in that way, because you're picking up on the things within yourself. You're picking, so that sensitivity, it's very parallel to awareness, but it also can be that, like, I'd say it's like an external awareness and an internal awareness is sensitivity. But like awareness, I'd say, like on its own is internal, if that makes sense. Do you get me? Like awareness is purely like that. Sensitivity is like as a grand scheme of things to everyone and how you relate to it and everything.
Really? What if it's the other way around? What if the sensitivity is within
everything, and awareness is purely internal?
Yeah.
Oh, wait, are you saying it says that I've glossed here?
No. I guess no. Like you're saying, I'm saying you're sensitive. We're with sensitivity, or we can even call it vulnerability as well.
Yeah.
With vulnerability and being, and so we have the inner sensitivity or the vulnerability, and then we have the external reality itself.
Yeah.
Is that what you're trying to say? Oh,
where does awareness come into that? What's awareness for you in that? Is awareness the awareness the whole kind of grand scheme of things? Is that how you're saying it?
Oh, wait. Hold on. Is awareness the whole grand scheme of things? Oh, you're asking what is awareness in general?
Yeah, for you.
Okay. Awareness is literally like, how can I explain this? So awareness is being in a situation, right? And first of all, everything, you're like shut off from thought. You're shut off from emotion. You're shut off from, and I'm not saying shut off isn't like you're completely shut off, but you're shut off from certain things in order to connect with your senses about the information that is flying in front of you. And so, like, for example, like if you're hanging out around a new group of people, a new group of friends or whatever, or you just met a new group of people, and you're in a situation where, okay, you're trying to pick up on vibes. You're not thinking about what you have to do tomorrow. You're not thinking about what was done today. You're not thinking about earlier in the day. You know what I mean? You're not thinking about how much money you have in your pocket. Hopefully nobody's broke around here. But yeah, you're not thinking. You're literally in a space and you're trying to literally read the person. Like you're not reading. You're not trying to read them by what they do in terms of like their work. You're literally just trying to read their energy. And you're trying to pick up on their senses. Like, okay, this person has this trait, or this person speaks like this, or this person isn't from the city. This person's more like from the outskirts, or et cetera, et cetera.
So do sensitivity and awareness, they're like come in hand or not?
Awareness and sensitivity. I think it now. Yeah, they could, because sensitivity is almost feeling something in your intuition about a situation or about a person or whatever. And so, sharing a little bit here, like, going through the journey that I went through, like always being aware constantly in this high state of mind. But then I was also reading people. I was always looking at, okay, this person. And it's not to say that I was being judgmental, but you never knew how someone was.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't know what they were going to do. So you're looking to see who is like, I don't know, who is, what's the word I'm looking for? Who could be a threat or who could be safe.
Mm-hmm.
Who's someone or group of people that you feel like you could be safe around. But then there's also, even when you get into that situation, there's that element of trust, and there's that sensitivity that kind of plays into being in this particular group, being around this particular group and whatnot. So, but yeah, sensitivity. Yeah, that's a really good one. That's a really good. It's actually a really interesting one. I guess. Yeah, it depends on what. Yeah, it depends on how like you are impacted in a way.
Mm-hmm.
Awareness, and sensitivity do, like, they're one of those things where they're parallel, and although they go in the same direction, they kind of both mean different
Mm-hmm.
things. You know what I
Yep.
mean?
That's why I would then say sensitivity is a blessing, because my belief and understanding is that breeds awareness.
Okay.
And because of that, as a person, what you've gone through, what you see, what you now understand and feel and think, it will, because of that, it then breeds the awareness to then hopefully deal with that, and then to hopefully grow in that awareness and progress, no matter how quick, no small, or deeper within.
Yeah.
But you mentioned trust, and I got to it, guess and kind of push that out there, that trust is a scary kind of situation with what you've gone through. And I remember realizing, or I remember seeing, I think I can't remember where it was, but it was your website or it's an interview or something, and you said to trust what's in your heart.
Mm.
And that really hit me hard, because I'm thinking logically, I'm like, this guy, he's had nothing, he's been at rock bottom at such a young age, and abandonment's like scary, scary, scary.
Mm.
And so this guy's using the word trust what's in your heart. Like, he's using the word trust.
Mm.
Where, how? Like, that is an incredible, like, yeah, like, what's your relationship with trust? And how did that trusting in, like, how did trusting in your, like, heart, where did that come from? How did that
You
exist?
know, this is funny because I'm still slowly kind of figuring out, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah, you kind of just reflect a little bit, and when you have been through a certain, like, vast amount of experiences where you've only had to depend on yourself, and even though you didn't exactly know what, like, you don't know, well, talking about decision making here, even though you didn't exactly have the answers for this decision, or you didn't know how this was going to turn out, it was like, okay, let's go this way, and almost like whatever happens, before making the decision, though, it was like making a decision with a balance between emotion and logic, you know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? And also, like, being in a space of humbleness. And so, like, for example, when going back to the story here, but when my mom abandoned me in that situation, no, I could have easily been upset, been angry, being bitter, being resentful, all those negative emotions. But I remember genuinely looking, and I was just literally standing here in the hardest skid row, and I was looking around, and I was just like in this kind of like disbelief. But also, it almost felt like it was nothing new, because literally the night before, I had been on transport all night, all day since the day
Mm-hmm.
before, and then
Yeah, I
going
remember
through it
this
all night.
story. Yeah.
And so, yeah, I turned out okay. But in that moment, it was like, well, okay, this is nothing new. Just literally, let's go try and find somewhere to sleep. And although I didn't exactly know how it was going to turn out, one thing I knew was that I just wanted to lay my head down at night somewhere,
Mm-hmm.
and I hope that to find that, because I hope to find that opportunity or that bed that I can sleep on. So I literally was in that space, and yeah, something just told me to go this way. rather than that way. And yeah, literally moments later, picked up by the police, and boom, ended up in a police station, and later in the night was in a foster care system.
Mhm.
And it was like, wow, like a completely like 180 turnaround. But what I'm trying to say is, in that moment where you are really forced to think, it's almost like you're on this walking path and you come across like, the path,
Yeah.
it forks off, it separates, it
Mhm.
splits, and you have this path, but this path is looking like it's leading into the water, and there's no telling what's going to happen down there. Although, it might look good from up here. Down there,
Mhm.
you get down there, it might be treacherous.
Mhm.
Or you can either go this way, go up into the mountains, and see the whole view for yourself. You know what I mean, sort of thing.
Mhm.
So I was like, all right, I'm gonna go this way. And yeah, it's literally the spirit, spirit of God or the higher self, whatever you want to label it, was watching beyond and just really like guiding me throughout that
Mhm.
direction. So but yeah, you sometimes you don't really know why like you make certain decisions, and you don't know why certain things happen, but or you don't know why you're forced to make these decisions, but you're forced to make a decision, and you kind of like just go with your gut. You go with your gut. You trust that your gut is going to help you to understand something, or is going to lead you along the way. But at the same time, life, universe isn't going to leave you hanging as well, because there's lessons to be learned. As always, that's not going to change.
Mhm.
So yeah, and that relationship with trust is kind of slowly grown. It's still in that space where I trust myself enough to make decisions that's going to help me get from point A to point B, even though the decision I make in that moment, I might not have enough, I don't know, sort of resource or whatever.
Mhm.
But I definitely, one thing I have is a heart.
Mhm.
I have a good mind, I have a good head over my shoulders, and I firmly believe that with a little bit of hope, things would turn out to be okay.
100%. I think that's an incredible kind of, surrendering to what what these decisions will bring you. Okay, I can make this, I'll go this way, and I'll surrender to whatever that gives me.
Yeah.
And that's pretty incredible. And to build that relationship of trust up again from from incredibly difficult times, which still, yeah, I still can't really get my head around, and I don't think I will be able to understand. um it's incredible. And in that, like, rebuilding of trust, and on that kind of, okay, like, it's obviously, like you said, just that healing journey of self-love, to trust in yourself, to trust in the
Mm,
decisions. And it's kind of like, if I can love myself, I can love others. If I choose to hate myself, I'm going to hate others.
mm,
And it's the, if I trust in myself, I can trust others.
mm.
And that's incredible that you're going on that journey, and you're finding the love for yourself, the trust for yourself. And yeah, it's amazing, man.
Yeah, appreciate that, man. And it's so important, and it's something that we should all do. We all have to do it, whenever we can, because we will feel better by the end of it, and we will
Hmm.
feel much more of being a greater version of ourselves. And plus, too, feeling healed, feeling empowered, and feeling like, yeah, we've just overcame something, and we've overcame this weight that we've learned to let go of this weight that we've been carrying for such a long time, and now we feel
Yeah,
so much more lighter. So yeah.
amazing. As I said before, your deep rooted sense of reality and how you've kind of faced it throughout this whole experience is pretty incredible. How, from acceptance, normally you'd say, you mentioned it at the beginning, that we'd come back to it, and from acceptance comes forgiveness.
Mm.
And that's obviously a pretty scary and difficult kind of concept. Where are you at with that, and how do you see all the, that side of things?
uh Acceptance and forgiveness. So yeah.
Well, I feel your acceptance is pretty strong, and I seem to, tell me if I'm wrong, but you've pretty accepted the situation step by step, and so from that comes a forgiveness. And yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that's where you want to go. So yeah, it's forgiveness. It's like you understand that the situation was what it was, and although like maybe they inflicted this on you, or maybe they might have did this to you or whatever, uh it might not be their fault, because this is something that they've probably learned from their own personal life journey. And because when you come across this realization, it kind of makes you feel like, okay, it's not their fault, and yes, they might have still did it, but equally, what good does it do, or what justice does it do holding on to resentment and holding on to the fact that this person has done this to you? You know, that it does nothing. If anything, it
Mm-hmm.
eats at you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so in order for you to again heal, recover, evolve, and transform, forgiveness is the first thing that is important. Like and to be fair, like I've never been upset at my mom. I've never really been angry. And although that's what's happened, you know, in fact, I may have been a bit upset with my mom when I was younger, because I just came from seeing her. Well, I came after I got into the foster care system. A few months after getting in, was having these visits, and I remember speaking to my mom and talking to her about, you know, why did you leave me there, and stuff like that. But she didn't. She seemed to not been picking up on it, and she was a bit ashamed or something. And then in that moment, I just kind of felt, I was mad, I was angry, but then I walked away, and I just felt like, yeah, maybe she's ashamed that she's done it, you know. And it's kind of one of those things that, okay, she's ashamed, you know, and if she is, then holding on to resentment isn't going to help the situation. It's just going to make it worse. So you kind of come across this level of acceptance that, you know what it is, and now I'm in a bit of a better situation. I can't be upset anymore. You know, if anything, you just pray that this person gets better, you know. And when my mom turned herself in to immigration in hopes of getting me back, but instead it backfired, and then she ended up being sent to England, I was actually kind of a bit like worried, because I was like, well, dang, I don't know how my mom is, you know, I don't know whether she has somewhere to stay. Is there going to be family members that's going to take care of her? You know, so that was that kind of overwhelming kind of concerned sensation I was feeling. And even then, okay, moving forward, you get into the foster care system, and I can remember, you know, relationship with my foster parent wasn't always the best. She tried her best. I give her that. I give her that. She did try her best, and I'm not even mad about it. But again, holding on to how someone used to treat you, and holding on to that sort of level of anger or resentment, that again, that doesn't help you in any sort of way. You
Mm-hmm.
know, again, it just eats at your soul. It eats at your ability. It blocks your blessings, you know, and that's not what you want. So, um, yeah, but yeah, it's important, like forgiveness. I mean, sometimes certain people are a certain way, you know, and it's one thing to it's one thing to be judgmental, but it's another thing to hold on, again, like to hold on to whatever they do to you, and then use that, hold on to it, and carry it moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I just, forgiveness is, you know, pure letting go of the heart, you know, pure letting go through the heart,
Mm-hmm.
and allowing the heart to to take that energy of resentment or regret, upset, anger, whatever, and turn it into something positive. You know, and also too, I also feel like we all have good hearts. You know, some of us, we could have a cold heart, but it's what vibes, right? What vibes? What is it that you feed your heart that allows it to stay warm? You know,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, it's kind of like that. That's the kind of soul. That's the kind of place that I come from. At least try to be warm around people, and again, I'm not perfect. Please don't think I'm this purest soul. But if there's one thing, especially like everything that I've been through my journey, I've always had a good heart, and I
Mm-hmm.
never ever want to see people like suffer or go through pain or go through experiences that present a threat and a negative in such a way that is detrimental to their well-being. So
See,
yeah.
I think that's beautiful. I think that I think was it that if you hold kind of anger and resentment, like you said, towards those situations, those people that have harmed you, they forever hold the keys to your happiness and your joy, and
Mm,
they are your jailer.
mm,
They keep you in that cell locked in. And I think, like you said, when you own that and when you go, like, I'm not going to hold on to that burden, like we said it right at the start, then you become free and you take control of your happiness, your joy.
yeah.
And it's beautiful to hear that you are then having compassion for your mom in that situation where, you know, it doesn't feel like that's the best thing, that was the right thing, what she should have done, and to then hold her in compassion, that's beautiful, man.
Mm.
And
Appreciate.
that compassion that you have for everyone is pretty incredible, and that breeds the opportunity to then give and to be generous and to give out your warm heart and to give to other people. And then that's when that's when, you know, you don't complete the game, but you realize that, you know, if I'm focused on the 7 million other sentient beings on this planet, then I don't know how I can be lonely or how I can suffer within my own self, because there's so many people to help and to give to. So yeah, how do you give? What, obviously you've started your mindful speaker, that's incredible. And
Appreciate that.
you, obviously you're talking and doing stuff like this to share your story and to, you know, give other people hope and stuff like that. Where's that come from? Was that, you know, out of your warm heart? And, you know, what kind of you do? You mentioned your workshops today.
Yeah. I honestly, I feel like the giving part came from, just realizing that we're all suffering in some sort of way, and we're suffering and we don't know what tools is it that we need in order to get out of this suffering. And so, as you know, in the Power Now, it says that the end of suffering, enlightenment is the end of suffering,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And so, um, it's one of those things that I know we've all suffered somehow. Even now to this day, there's still the generation behind us still suffering, and they need some guidance. They need wisdom. They need someone to kind of show them the way that would help them to get out of certain states of thought or belief,
Mm-hmm.
and to help them that will help them evolve and become their best version. And so, realizing that I love working with young people. I wouldn't mind working with adults either, and working in like businesses and working through like leadership stuff or whatever. But working with young people, investing in the younger generation, um, and getting them to invest in their mindset, invest in themselves, like that's probably my sort of motto for giving. Inspiring them to invest in yourself. The earlier you start, the better off you will be 3, 4, 5 years from now.
Mm-hmm.
So and that's the one thing that I would love to have. If I knew what I knew now, and we all say this, if I knew what I knew now when I was like 10, 11, 12, 13, 15, man, you'd be in a completely different place,
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
But you have that
And
opportunity for when you're 40.
exactly. Oh my goodness, you're living a completely different lifestyle. So yeah, it's one of those things that just showing the way and try to help young people understand that a lot of the things that we go through in life can change based on the point at which we see things. If we can change the
Mm-hmm.
way we see things, and the things we see change. And so, yeah, it's one of those sort of like that's the motivation, that's the inspiration that that where it comes from, isn't it? And understanding that like the power of change is amazing. If when you let go of these old thoughts that don't serve you, but you hold on to them and you hold on to them, they don't serve you. They get you nowhere. They keep you at point A, and there's literally point B right there. But point B is a better version of point A. Like,
Mm-hmm.
what about point B that's better about point A is it that you don't see? People choose to stay on point A because they're either afraid to take the leap, they don't like change, or they just fear that things are going to be uncomfortable, you know. And that's the thing about life. Life is never comfortable. If life is comfortable, then yeah, we got be prepared because life is going to throw something at you where you're going to feel uncomfortable. So, but yeah, that's the motivation, and yeah, just knowing that people, there's young people that all want to be successful. Right? If you want to be successful, it's all good talking about it, but what's the kind of mindset that you carry? You know, and that's the thing. Like everybody wants to play basketball, wants to be a footballer, or wants to be a business owner, or whatever. Well, okay, cool, but you also have to understand who you are as a person and what habits is it that you have that are actually holding you back from getting there.
And that leads me beautifully to my final question, which is what makes you more than a basketball player? What makes you more than an athlete? What makes you human?
What makes me human?
And
that I have a soul. Yeah, nah, real talk. What makes me human? Listen, what is being human? What is human? Are we there's that most infamous question. Are we spiritual beings having a human experience, or are we humans having a spiritual experience? Could be both, you know what I mean? But I think once you understand what it means to be human, and being human is just, yeah, I don't even know how to explain being human, because it's such an emotional thing. But at the same, well, we all are humans. I mean, we all are emotional beings. But there's it's like what makes us human is the values in which we share and which we believe in that makes this world a better place. I think that's what makes us human.
I love it. That's beautifully put. It's a beautiful way to put it. I love that. I love that, man. I want to say a big, huge thank you and so much gratitude for coming on and telling your story and sharing your wisdom and your experiences and yeah, being yourself. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on and have these beautiful conversations that we've just had.
No worries, Elliot. No, special shout out to you, man. Really appreciate you having me come on your show. You know, it's amazing talking to a person like you who's also had lots of wisdom and genuine understanding, and you're compassionate, and your ability to listen, take it in, and process it, and put it in such a way like it makes it so much more easier to know that someone that you're talking to is also at least trying to understand it, or who does even understand it. So yeah, I mean, this show is all because of you, man. So listen, I was just here to support you, and happy that we've had these kind of conversations. It's been great.
Thank you very much, man. Yeah, thank you for your words and yeah, thank you for your your presence here.
No worries. Thank you so much for having me on.
Cool.